just a little background on me. So I've managed nonprofit organizations in the U.S., in Haiti, and in Belize for about 20 years, a little bit more. And I was the founding executive director of Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, which means that I started it from the ground. And I am now the founding managing director of Love Foundation, again, a project that I started from the ground. Um, with no funding. And I've authored proposals garnering more than $20 million in funding. That's throughout the time of my work experience. So we're going to jump right into this proposal writing. So before we begin, first of all, when you're writing your proposal, this is supposed to be your dream, your vision, and your idea. All right. So whether it's called grants, fellowships, or awards, it's all proposal writing. And there's really no single method of doing that. And so the best advice that I can give to you guys is that you talk to the people who are in charge of the program, that you are hoping to apply to, someone who has been funded by the program you're applying to, and always know that, yes, you can get a grant. A lot of people think that they have to have certain requirements, certain specific requirements to be able to get a grant. But basically, anybody can get a grant if you follow the simple procedures that we're going to go through. Any questions so far? So there's two types of writing when we are writing grants, and there's the persuasive versus the expository. So expository writing exposes or illuminates. So you might think, well, that's what you want to do. You want to expose your program. But the purpose of expository writing is mainly to enlighten and instruct. And you use that in essays, newspapers, magazine articles, which is definitely not the grant writing. So you want to look at persuasive writing, which persuasive writing is intended to convince readers to believe an idea. So you're selling an idea, you're selling your dream, you're selling your vision. So this is what you want to use when you were writing proposals. So I gave, on the screen you can see two examples. So one example of expository writing is the Love Foundation has a reputation for working with youth and has provided training which allows them to become advocates for a transparent society. It exposes what we do, it illuminates what we do. But that will not get someone to be interested in what I'm doing. So persuasive writing is the Love Foundation is requesting X amount of money, which will be used to develop the capacity of youth in Belize to become true advocates in the fight for good governance, transparency, and ethics. I am now selling my idea, my dream, and my vision. All right. And so you want to, again, focus on using persuasive writing versus expository writing. So our next slide. So funding agencies and foundations. So you want to select projects that will enable you to achieve your goals, right? The whole reason we think about writing a proposal is because we have goals that we want to achieve, and we want to ensure that we find the money or the resources to be able to do that. However, what a lot of people don't do is they don't really take the time to look at what the funding agencies or foundations are interested in. It's just like if you're looking for donors, you don't just go to everybody and say, I'm a representative of BAPTA and this is what we do. That person might not be interested in that. That person might be interested in cancer, just showing you something different. So the project must be a good fit for the funder's priorities, right? So you need to do your research. You must understand these priorities before you start writing the proposal. So don't start writing a proposal if you haven't researched anything about the funder or do not know the priorities that they will fund. So you can look at the funder's website and you can look at their About Us or priorities or history to see what they funded before, what they're interested in funding. You can look at their strategic report. It can tell you maybe they funded a certain project before, but now, looking at their strategy, they're changing their strategy and funding something else. So they may have a reputation for funding one thing, but their strategy may have changed. Remember, board members change, presidents of boards change, presidents of foundations change, their strategies change. So you want to look at their website, you want to look at their strategic reports, their annual reports, speeches that maybe key members of their board may have made, presentations by top officials, because a lot of times that will give you an insight into what it is that they're interested in. You also want to look at who received funding from them before, so previous awards or awardees. The funding opportunity announcement, that's key. You look at that, and then you look at all these other things. So there has to be some level of investigation when you're looking to write a proposal. I'm sorry. And then a proposal is more like a written job interview than a journal article, okay? What you are doing is you want to tell a story. You don't want to tell a story, you really want to convince the funder to choose you. And that is the reason we say a proposal is more like a written job interview than a journal article, okay? A lot of times when we write proposals, we focus on the story rather than, trying to sell them why your organization would be qualified to do the work that you're saying you want to do. And again, I can't stress this enough. You must do your homework. You must understand the priorities of the funding agency. You read some successful proposals to that agency. A lot of times there will be successful proposals posted online depending on the organization that you're looking at. You want to talk to people who have been funded by them. This is very public information. You know who's received funding from certain entities. Talk to them to see what the process was like. Talk to them about what their proposal was like. Look at recent awards, who and where, and if possible, check out who the reviewers are. This is not always common knowledge. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. And sometimes when you do what I call the cocktail circuit, that's the time that I take to talk to people about, what they have been engaged in. A lot of times if the funder invites you to an event, a lot of the people who are reviewers or who are involved in a proposal process will be at that event. So try to network and find out that information and see, if you can find out who those reviewers are or were. Again, read, very, very key, very important, is to read the funding opportunity announcement. So you want to know, are you eligible to begin with, right? What are the requirements that they're asking for? When is it due? Do you have enough time to work on this? When is it due? Who is the program officer? Do you know the program officer? Have you talked to them before? Program officer is usually the person who is in charge of sending out the notice of funding opportunity, the person who works with the people who receive grants. That's the program officer. So you may want to find out, who that person is and see if you can have a conversation with that person. You want to know how many awards will be made. So if the entire pot is $1 million or $700,000, how many awards? And usually on the notice of funding opportunity, it will say we plan to make 5 awards or 10 awards, whatever it is. So if they're saying we plan to make 10 awards and it's $1 million, then you know what your ceiling could be, right? And a lot of times, not saying that you shouldn't go over the ceiling, but a lot of times, if you do go over the ceiling, I would not go over the ceiling by, $100,000. If the ceiling is 100,000, you wouldn't submit a proposal for 200. You'd submit a proposal somewhere between 100 and 150, so you are still within the ballpark, okay? Is cost share a requirement? Okay, so this is one of the things that stumps people a lot of time. Cost share is in-kind contribution to your grant. So sometimes a funder might say no cost share is required, but there is cost share because there's, nowadays, it used to be, but nowadays there are no funding opportunities that will give you 100% of the cost that you need to make the program work. So for example, where you are, you have an office space, you may or may not be paying rent, but that is a cost share. Either someone is allowing you to use a space, and that space has a cost to it. So that's a cost share. So even if you're not paying rent, you should at least know what the cost of that space would be if you were renting it, and you put that in as a cost share. That's a legitimate cost share. If you have vehicle expense, a grant probably in most cases will not pay for vehicle expense. You want to put that in as a cost share. So if the executive director is not getting 100% of their salary from this grant, 50% is coming from somewhere, or 25% is coming from somewhere. That is a cost share. If the grant is only paying for 3 people in your office, but you have 6 people in your office, well, the other 3 people are cost shares. So you want to put those in to ensure that you have effectively costed out what it will cost to do your program. And another thing, sometimes people don't put in the cost share, and then the reviewer is asking, well, how is this possible? How is this going to make, how they're only requesting salary for these 3 people, but I don't see a salary for an admin person, or I don't see a salary for an accounting person, when that accounting person is probably in your office, or the accounting person is a contracted person, and you have not included that cost. That cost would be a cost share, okay? Is it a limited submissions program? So you need to find out. Some grants are limited submissions, so they will only accept a certain amount of submissions. You need to find out if that is the case. Again, read the description specifically for the kinds of projects they're looking for. That is key. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No. Okay.
No.
Okay, so the other thing is to understand the review criteria. So when you receive a notice of funding opportunity, 90% of the time, there will be a review criteria listed. You need to be able to look at what that review criteria is. So it will be listed in either the funding opportunity or on the funder's website. But there is always a review criteria. So you could either find it in the notice of funding opportunity or on the website. So you can't write a proposal until you know what you will be graded on, right? So that's why that is important, because you can't just sit down and start writing not knowing what specifically, the points are, where the points will count. Write with the intention of providing certain lines that can specifically fulfill criteria. All right. What this means is that, for example, within, let's just, a quick, easy example of a funding opportunity that is very, very, very clear is a funding opportunity for the U.S. Embassy CARSI programs. So there's several objectives that are listed that they will fund. One of the key things to do is to reference that objective, whatever objective you're addressing. So when I say write with the intention of providing certain lines that can specifically fulfill certain criteria, for example, you will say this project will address objective number 1, and you will write out exactly, you'll take the content from the notice of funding opportunity and you will place it into your proposal. So within the first paragraph, the reviewer knows exactly what you're addressing. So you're addressing objective number 1, which states, and whatever that states, and you write it word for word. So one of the tricks of successful grant writing is pulling the information, or pulling the content from the proposal, from the notice of funding opportunity, and putting it into your proposal. The reason why you do this is because the reviewers are familiar with the notice of funding opportunity. And the more they see the same language, the more it's going to stick with them, and they're going to start becoming really familiar with your project. And it builds familiarity with them. If you do not do that, a lot of times the reviewers lose interest very quickly while reading your proposal. So let's look at the, where are we? Oh, I think I just skipped a few, I'm sorry. Okay, so the reviewers. Now, this is key. When we write a proposal, like I just mentioned, you really want to use words and the information from the notice of funding opportunity or from their website. You want to use familiar jargon that will keep them interested, because reviewers, there can be two types of reviewers. One reviewer can be someone that works for the funder. So their motivation is to select projects that have a high likelihood of achieving and funding the agency's priorities and make their organization look good. Okay? The second would probably be a volunteer. And their motivation would be to select quality projects, provide a service to their field, and keep up with the latest research. So a volunteer would probably just kind of know the area, the space that the funder works in, and they want to make sure that the projects that they select will provide the service to the field and keep up with the latest research. So there's two different types of reviewers. Reviewers usually are not experts in your specific area of research or your specific area that you're working in. They're usually people that, although they may work for the organization, they're not, there's no such thing as a job as a reviewer. So they're being pulled in from another department or pulled in from within the organization to read the proposals. Two, they read a lot of proposals in a relatively short time. So again, it's important that within your first paragraph and within your first page, the reviewer has to be able to know exactly what you're going to do. Maybe in a windowless conference room in a city far from home. Yes, that's another thing. A lot of times the reviewers are not familiar with your community. They're reviewers from outside. A lot of our funding in Belize are funding from outside entities, the US Embassy, the Canadian Embassy, the German Commission, Australian Commission. A lot of our funding comes from outside. So these people are somewhere else and they don't really understand some of the issues that you're faced with. And you have to be very, very specific in explaining that. You have to paint them a picture so that they can really understand what it is that, you know, that you're getting, that you want them to understand about your project, how important your project is. They're either not paid or not paid enough. So a lot of times that can be a factor. At some point are regretting their decision to be a reviewer. I have actually had someone who has sat on a panel say to me, I will never sit on that panel again because it was tedious, it was long days, and you know, it was a lot of work. And they were a volunteer reviewer. So those sentiments are very real. So you have to understand that when you're writing a proposal, you have to give the reviewer a very clear picture of what it is that your project will do and how your project will be able to enhance the area that you're working in. And by all saying that, I mean reduce your reviewer's cognitive burden. So by this, I mean you want to simplify things as much as possible for your reviewers. Again, you want to paint them a vivid picture of what your organization does, what your organization will do, and how this is going to enhance, how your project will enhance whatever it is that you're saying it will enhance. So, okay, so how to write a proposal. Heimler's Catechism is something that I always use. This method was devised by George Heimer, and he was a researcher who developed a series of questions. Those questions allow you to think through and evaluate your proposal, and I always go through this. So we're going to touch on that, and then we'll go into the do's and don'ts of proposal writing. Any questions? Okay, so question one. What are you trying to do? So I'm giving you examples that I pulled out from successful proposals that I've written. So you have to be clear on what it is that you're trying to do. And in this instance, I said this project will strengthen civil society organizations and civil servants' knowledge and skill to develop policies and procedures aimed at reducing corruption and impunity or improved accountability, right? So very clear what it is that I want to do with this funding. I'm sorry, it keeps slipping here. Oh, I'm all the way at number 6. Sorry, guys, just bear with me a quick second here. Okay, number 2, how is it done today and what are your current limitations? Today meaning in this day and age, how's it done and what are your current limitations? Now, that's why I said when you're writing a proposal, you need to do your research. You need to understand what's being done out there, what other people are doing, if anybody's doing what you're doing, and how are they doing it, and what are your limitations. In Belize, in order to effect long-lasting change in areas of corruption and lack of transparency, we need to embrace an all-encompassing, sustained effort that will build the capacity of CSOs, public officers, and youth. So we want to look at all these different people. Our limitations, we're looking at 3 different groups, different age groups, different backgrounds. And of course, in the proposal, we further explain that. But so question number 3, what's new in your approach and why do you think it will be successful? So in order to effect change, the Love Foundation will mobilize all segments of society, create public awareness on the detrimental impact of corruption, and create instruments that will be used to suppress corruption. All right. Based on our research, we knew that these things were not being done to the level that we felt it had to be done in order to be successful, or in order to move the pendulum a little bit farther into addressing good governance, ethics, and transparency. So, you know, that was one of the statements that we had in our grant proposal. Question number 4, who cares? If you're successful, what difference will it make? You have to ask yourself this question. All right. So in order to create in order to create transparent public institutions, it is necessary to create an enabling environment that will support and require transparency and accountability. All right. So again, those are great questions to ask yourself when you're doing proposal writing, because it will help you to be able to address some of the real issues and bring to light what it is that you're really trying to do for your funders. What are the risks and the payoffs? So we said we understand fully that in order to create transparent public institutions, it is necessary not only to work with their current employees, civil servants, but also to create an enabling environment that will support and require transparency and accountability. Okay? We all know how difficult it is to be able to implement something like this within government institutions, which in our proposal, we proposed to work with government institutions. And so we knew that would have been a risk and a challenge. But if we were able to get in, we knew that we would be creating an environment that would enable and support transparency and accountability, which we were able to do. But I have to say it was difficult. Question number 6. What are the midterm and final exams to check for success? So you must say within your proposal, somewhere in your proposal, by the end of year 1, X amount of participants would have completed. This was taken from another successful proposal that we had. Would have completed all job training and be ready for job placement. An X amount of participants will be placed by the end of the project period and be gainfully employed for at least 180 days. These are measurable. These are measurable goals. This is something that the funder can hold you to. They can say by year 1, if you put a number, they can look. That's a quantifiable way to measure your success. So if you said 100 people would be placed and you only place 50, then the funder would be able to ask you what happened to the other 50. At the end of the year, you said X amount were going to be placed and they were going to be employed for at least 180 days. That's another way for them to be able to monitor and evaluate if you're, the success of your project. Okay, things that you should not do. Do not do these things. Do not use big words unless you have to. Grandiose language. Sometimes I know people who write in a very technical manner. Remember, the people who are reviewing your proposal are not all that familiar. They may be volunteers, but this is really not what they do for a full-time basis. And so that may be an issue that might get your proposal tossed out because they're not really understanding. They can't really follow what you're saying. Run-on sentences and walls of text. Walls of text will remind people that they're reading. I don't know if you guys have ever read those books that are just like small words and just run on text. So this is an example of a wall of text. This is bad. You do not want your proposal to look like this in any way, shape, or form. You want to highlight. Okay, so this is an example of how you would break up your proposal. Just an example. But you want to highlight things. You want to bold words or sentences or phrases that are important to your proposal. Okay, so these are some of the things that you should do. Clear and concise title. From the time they look at your proposal, the title should be able to tell them what it is that they are looking forward to. Bold, italicized, underline key points. Okay, every time you're highlighting something. For me, whenever I'm writing a proposal and I'm using words directly from their notice of funding opportunity, I will highlight or italicize those words because I want them to jump out at the reader. Use graphics and tables. Instead of explaining numbers or percentages, use graphics and tables. It's easier on the eyes. If you've been reading proposals for a long time, having a graphic and a table jump out at you, it's something that would be a lot easier for you to be able to take on. Summarize long sections. Don't be long-winded. You need to summarize. Ask yourself what it is that you're trying to say and just kind of wrap it up. Have a clearly defined structure. So if it's the program narrative, whatever your sections are, you want to have them clearly defined. The monitoring and evaluation section, the sustainability section, the budget section. Write specifically to the review criteria. Again, very, very important. Once you know what it is that they're reviewing, that they'll be looking for, you want to write specifically to that. Like I said, pull information out of the notice of funding opportunity and keep repeating those phrases that are within the funding opportunity, within the objectives of the funding opportunity. And then, very simple, just tell what you want to do. I mean, a lot of people get anxious when they're starting to write a proposal. But if you're writing a proposal, it's because you have a clear vision, you have an idea of what it is that you need to do, what it is that you want to do, and how this is going to make your beneficiaries better in some kind of way. So the proposal should state within the first paragraph exactly what you are proposing to do. Pretend that you are talking to someone and saying, this is what I want to do. I'm writing a proposal because, and that's the way that you would start off your proposal. You would say, what the issue is, and just say it just as if you were having a conversation. Many people give in-depth backgrounds of the problem, which build up to the reveal of their proposed solution. Don't be long-winded in the beginning. You'll have enough time throughout the proposal to in each category to really talk about what it is that you're trying to do. So the first paragraph should be a complete summary of what it is that you need to do, what you want to do. And then you lead with the solution and explain why the problem is important. So let's say, for example, you're writing a proposal, BAPTA was writing a proposal. So, BAPTA would lead with saying, although the Disabilities Act was signed onto whenever it was signed onto, there's still a very important need to do X, Y, and Z. And so you want to speak specifically to what those issues would be. And then we get to the budget. So in the budget, ask for exactly what you need. If you pad the budget with extra expenses, the reviewers will call you on it. If you ask for too little, reviewers will question if you can accomplish your task, right? So you want to have a clear idea. I have seen budgets. You want to have a clear idea of what a budget should look like. So in your budget, you want to make sure that if you're putting in for salary, that the salary is a reasonable salary that people are asking, that people would be paid. So if you say an executive director, you want to put in a reasonable salary. You don't want to, pad the salary for the executive director, and then you have a budget of $100,000, and then $60,000 of your $100,000 is going into salaries. Just for the record, guys, your admin expenses should be no more than 20%. If you keep the 18 to 20% should be your admin of your overall proposal. That is with cost share included. Make sure to budget for all tasks, because one of the questions it will be, how are they going to do it if they don't have the money? So you may not be able to ask for all the money, but you need to identify resources that you will put in as a cost share to ensure that you are able to do the project that you're proposing to do. Work with your financial staff to complete the budget. And this is for larger organizations. If you have people who do payroll, like an accountant or somebody like that, you want to make sure that you sit with them to complete the budget, okay, according to the funding opportunities instructions. So some budgets will not include infrastructure costs. So if you need to repair something, repair a room, you can't put it in there. Some budgets will not allow you to pay for vehicle expense and maintenance. So you want to make sure that that you're able to understand what it is that the funder will pay and what they won't pay for. Any questions? Hello?
No.
If you guys have questions, you can turn off the mute on your mic. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure.
This was our first project, and so BAPTA is a fully volunteer organization, and I see where it is so critical for us to have had a stipend or a salary for a project coordinator. And so what you said earlier was very relevant for me, especially in this project.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments? I just saw we had like 1 minute remaining, so no other comments, no other questions. If you guys ever, and I just want to offer this, that if you guys ever have any questions on your proposal writing or questions about, I think the Love Foundation have been funded by most of the funders who fund. We're all international funding. We receive no funding from the government of Belize. So all of our funding comes from international funders, and we're pretty familiar with majority of the ones that work in Belize. So if you guys ever have a question or need us to assist you in any kind of way, we would be happy to do so. Just let us know. And our offices are located in Belmopan. We are online. We have a website, and we also have a Facebook and Instagram page, so you guys can feel free to contact us that way, and also through the Belize Association of Planners if you have any questions at all.